Hey, Laura J. here to say today we're going to be listening to the reading of The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron. And we're listening to week 12 on faith, which is the week we're starting with in the 12-week series of emails I'll be posting on Sundays to ljeh.ca. If you're not already subscribed to emails from that channel, please make sure that you do subscribe. There's a sign up box right on the homepage so that you can be part of the book launch for Fully Committed, The Sacred Sojourn of Now, which is my book that will be coming out very soon. We're in the final stages of the publishing process, and I am so excited and so grateful to have that nearly ready for you and look forward to bringing it to you very soon. Check out the recording while I do some movement. Please do feel free to move along too. The more you move your body, the more flexibility you will have, the more emotions you'll be able to move as you work through bringing more light into the vessel that transports your soul through this life in. So I look forward to going on a deeper dive journey with you and hope that you enjoy today's view too. I just want to read you something that might help you remember who you truly are, where you came from, and why you're here. Imagine you are a prince. One day your parents, the king and queen, send you on a mission to a distant land. You must find a pearl guarded by a hungry dragon. You take off your royal robe and leave the kingdom of your parents. You journey to this distant land, putting on dirty clothes and disguising yourself as one of her people. Somehow, the people of this land discover that you are a foreigner. They give you food that makes you forget your royal birth, and it makes you believe that you are one of them. You sink into a deep sleep. Your parents see your plight and send you a letter that tells you to awaken. It reminds you of your quest to recover the pearl. You remember who you are, a child of kings. You quickly subdue the dragon, retrieve the pearl, and depart, leaving the dirty clothing behind. When you return to your native land, you see your royal robe, which reminds you of the splendor you lived in before. The garment speaks to you, telling you that it belongs to the one who is stronger than all humans. You put on your royal robe once more and return to your father's palace. On that note, we will get into the reason you came here today, which is for recovering a sense of faith. In this final week, we acknowledge the inherently mysterious spiritual heart of creativity. We address the fact that creativity requires receptivity and profound trust, capacities we have developed through our work in this course. We set our creative aims and take a special look at last-minute sabotage. We renew our commitment to the use of the tools, and each of these are what we can use to get ourselves through those moments when we're feeling unsettled. So here we go. Trusting. Adventures don't begin until you get into the forest. That first step is an act of faith. Mickey Hart, Grateful Dead drummer. Creativity requires faith. Faith requires that we relinquish control. This is frightening, and we resist it. Our resistance to our creativity is a form of self-destruction. We throw up roadblocks on our own path. Why do we do this? In order to maintain an illusion of control. Depression, like anger and anxiety, is resistance, and it creates dis-ease. This manifests itself as sluggishness, confusion. I don't know. The truth is, we do know, and we know that we know. Each of us has an inner dream that we can unfold if we will just have the courage to admit what it is, and the faith to trust our own admission. The admitting is often very difficult. A clearing affirmation can often open the channel. One excellent one is, I know the things I know. Another is, I trust my own inner guide. Either of these will eventually yield us a sense of our own direction, which we will often then promptly resist. This resistance is really very understandable. We are not accustomed to thinking that God's will for us and our own inner dreams can coincide. Instead, we have bought the message of our culture. This world is a vale of tears, and we are meant to be dutiful and then die. The truth is that we are meant to be bountiful and live. Because if you actually spell evil backwards, that is when we get live, because the devil backwards is lived. And if we are in fear, we are not living fully. When we are in fear, that is when God is masquerading as a dog, backed into a corner, ready to bite anything that comes at it, because survival living and thrival living, very different experiences, and creative approaches for creativity and reactivity have the same letters in a Scrabble game. It's just where we put the C for creativity and the E for energy that determines the placement of the energy. The universe will always support affirmative action. Our truest dream for ourselves is always God's will for us. Mickey Hart's hero and mentor, the late great mythologist Joseph Campbell, wrote, "Follow your bliss, and doors will open where there were no doors before." It is the inner commitment to be true to ourselves and follow our dreams that triggers the support of the universe. While we are ambivalent, the universe will seem to us also to be ambivalent and erratic. The flow through our lives will be characterized by spurts of abundance and long spells of drought when our supply dwindles to a mere trickle. If we look back at the times when the world seemed to be a capricious and untrustworthy place, we see that we were ourselves ambivalent and conflicted in our goals and behaviors. Once we trigger an internal yes by affirming our truest goals and desires, the universe mirrors that and expands it. There is a path for each of us. When we are on our right path, we have a sure-footedness. We know the next right action, although not necessarily what is just around the bend. By trusting, we learn to trust. Mystery. Creativity, like human life itself, begins in darkness. We need to acknowledge this. All too often, we think only in terms of light, and then the light bulb went on and I got it. It is true that insights may come to us as flashes. It is true that some of these flashes may be blinding. It is, however, also true that such bright ideas are preceded by a gestation period that is interior, murky, and completely necessary. We speak often about ideas as brain children. What we do not realize is that brain children, like all babies, should not be dragged from the creative womb prematurely. Ideas like stalactite and stalagmites form in the dark inner cave of consciousness. They form in drips and drops, not by squared off building blocks. We must learn to wait for an idea to hatch, or to use a gardening image. We must learn to not pull our ideas up by the roots to see if they are growing. Mulling on the page is an artless art form. It is fooling around, it is doodling. It is the way that ideas slowly take shape and form until they are ready to help us see the light. All too often, we try to push, pull, outline, and control our ideas instead of letting them grow organically. The creative process is a process of surrender, not control. Mystery is at the heart of creativity, that and surprise. All too often, when we say we want to be creative, we mean that we want to be able to be productive. Now, to be creative is to be productive, but by cooperating with the creative process, not forcing it. As creative channels, we need to trust the darkness. We need to learn to gently mull instead of churning away like a little engine on a straight ahead path. This mulling on the page can be very threatening. I'll never get any real ideas this way, we fret. Hatching an idea is a lot like baking bread. An idea needs to rise. If you poke at it too much at the beginning, if you keep checking on it, it will never rise. A loaf of bread or a cake, baking, must stay for a good long time in the darkness and safety of the oven. Open that oven too soon and the bread collapses, or the cake gets a hole in its middle because all the steam is rushed out of it. Creativity requires a respectful reticence. The truth is that this is how to raise the best ideas. Let them grow in dark and mystery. Let them form on the roof of our consciousness. Let them hit the page in droplets. Trusting this slow and seemingly random drip, we will be startled one day by the flash of, oh, that's it? Do not fear mistakes. There are none. Miles Davis. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. Albert Einstein. What shakes the eye but the invisible? Theodore Roethke. The imagination at play. When we think about creativity, it is all too easy to think art with a capital A. For our purposes, capital A art is a scarlet letter, branding us as doomed. In order to nurture our creativity, we require a sense of festivity, even humor. Art, that's somebody my sister used to date. We are an ambitious society, and it is often difficult for us to cultivate forms of creativity that do not directly serve us and our career goals. Recovery urges our re examining definitions of creativity and expanding them to include what in the past we called hobbies. The experience of creative living argues that hobbies are in fact essential in the joyful life. Then, too, there is the hidden benefit that they are also creatively useful. Many hobbies involve a form of artist brain mulling that leads to enormous creative breakthroughs. When I have screenwriting students stuck at the midpoint of Act 2, I ask them to please go do their household mending. They usually balk, offended by such a mundane task, but sewing has a nice way of mending up plots. Gardening is another hobby I often assign to creativity students. When someone is panicked halfway across the bridge into a new life, repotting plants into larger and better containers quite literally grounds that person and gives him or her a sense of expansion. Spiritual benefits accompany the practice of a hobby. There is a release into humility that comes from doing something by rote. As we serve our hobby, we are freed from our ego's demands and allowed the experience of merging with the greater source. This conscious contact frequently affords us the perspectives needed to solve vexing personal and creative conundrums. It is a paradox of creative recovery that we must get serious about taking ourselves lightly. We must work at learning to play. Creativity must be freed from the narrow parameters of capital A art and recognized as having much broader play, that word again. As we work with our morning pages and artist dates, many forgotten samplings of our own creativity may come to mind. I had forgotten all about those paintings I did in high school. I loved painting those flats in Dramatech. I suddenly remembered I played Antigone. Who could forget her? I don't know if I was any good, but I remember I loved it. I'd forgotten all about the skits I wrote when I was 10. I set them all to Ravel's Bolero, no matter what they were about. I made my brothers and sisters swoon about the living room. I used to tap dance. I know you can't believe it now, but I was something. As we write, digging ourselves out of denial, our memories, dreams, and creative plans all move to the surface. We discover anew that we are creative beings. The impulse cooks in us all, simmering along all the time, without our knowledge, without our encouragement, even without our approval. It moves beneath the surface of our lives, showing in bright flashes, like a penny, in our stream of thought, like new grass under snow. We are intended to create. We refurbish a dowdy kitchen, tie bows on a holiday cat, experiment with a better soup. The same child who brewed perfume from a dab of this and a dash of that, half dish soap and part cinnamon, grows up to buy potpourri and to boil a spice pot that says Christmas. As gray, as controlled, as dreamless as we may strive to be, the fire of our dreams will not stay buried. The embers are always there, stirring in our frozen souls like winter leaves. They won't go away. They are sneaky. We make a crazy doodle in a boring meeting. We post a silly card on our office board. We nickname the boss something wicked. Plant twice as many flowers as we need. We strive in our lives. We yearn for more. We wish, we chafe. We sing in the car, slam down the phone, make lists, clear closets, sort through shelves. We want to do something, but we think it needs to be the right something, by which we mean something important. We are what's important, and the something that we do can be something festive but small. Dead plants go, mismatched socks bite the dust. We are stung by loss, bitten by hope. Working with our morning pages, a new and gaudy life takes form. Who bought that azalea? Why the sudden taste for pink? Is this picture you've tacked up a you you're going toward? Your shoes feel worn, you threw them out. There's a garage sale coming and you are playing host. You buy a first edition, splurge on new sheets. A friend worries once too often about what's come over you and you take your first vacation in years. The clock is ticking and you're hearing the beat. You stop by a museum shop, sign your name on a scuba diving sheet, and commit yourself to a Saturday mornings in the deep end. You're either losing your mind or gaining your soul. Life is meant to be an artist date. That's why we were created. Play is the exaltation of the possible. Martin Buber. For me, a painting is like a story which stimulates the imagination and draws the mind into a place filled with expectation, excitement, wonder, and pleasure. J.P. Houston. Escape velocity. My friend Michelle has a theory born of long and tangled romantic experience. In a nutshell, it goes, when you're going to leave them, they know. This same theory applies to creative recovery. It occurs when you reach what Michelle calls escape velocity. As she puts it, there's this time for blast off, like a NASA space launch, and you're heading for it when wham, you draw to the test. The test? Yeah, the test. It's like when you're all set to marry the nice guy, the one who treats you right and Mr. Poison gets wind of it and phones you up. The whole trick is to evade the test. We all draw to us the one test that's our total nemesis. Lawyer by trade and a writer by application and temperament, Michelle is fond of conspiracy theories, which she lays out in sinister detail. Think of it. You're all set to go to the coast on an important business trip, and your husband suddenly needs you. Capital N, for no real reason. You're all set to leave the bad job, and the boss from hell suddenly gives you your first raise in 5 years. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. Listening to Michelle talk, it was clear that her years as a trial attorney stood her in good stead as a creative person. She at least was no longer fooled. But is it really so sinister as she implied? Do we really draw to us a test? I thought about everything Michelle had told me, and I concluded that the answer was yes. I thought of all the times I'd been fooled. There was the agent who managed to undo done deals, but apologized so prettily. There was the editor who asked for rewrite upon rewrite until gruel was all that remained, but who always said I wrote brilliantly and was her brightest star. A little flattery can go a long way toward deterring our escape velocity. So can a little cash. More sinister than either is the impact of a well-placed doubt can have, particularly a for your own good, just wanting to make sure you've thought about this doubt, voiced by one of our nearest and dearest. As recovering creatives, many of us find that every time our career heats up, we reach for our nearest wet blanket. We blurt out our enthusiasm to our most skeptical friend. In fact, we call him up. If we don't, he calls us. This is the test. Our artist is a child, an inner youngster, and when he or she is scared, mummy is what's called for. Unfortunately, many of us have wet blanket mummies and a whole army of wet blanket surrogate mommies. Those friends who have our second, third, and fourth thoughts for us. The trick is not to let them be that way. How? Zip the lip. Button up. Keep a lid on it. Don't give away the gold. Always remember the first rule of magic is self-containment. You must hold your intention within yourself, stoking it with power. Only then will you be able to manifest what you desire. In order to achieve escape velocity, we must learn to keep our own counsel, to move silently among doubters, to voice our plans only among our allies, and to name our allies accurately. Make a list, those friends who will support me. Make another list, those friends who won't. Name your WBs for what they are, wet blankets. Wrap yourself in something else, dry ones, fluffy heated towels. Do not indulge or tolerate anyone who throws cold water in your direction. Forget good intentions, forget they didn't mean it. Remember to count your blessings and your toes. Escape velocity requires the sword of steely intention and the shield of self-determination. They will try to get you. Don't forget that, warns Michelle. Set your goals and set your boundaries. I would add, set your sights and don't let the ogre that looms on the horizon deflect your flight. One does not discover new lands without consenting to lose sight of the shore for a very long time. Andre Gide. Tasks. Write down any resistance, anger, and fears you have about going on from here. We all have them. Take a look at your current areas of procrastination. What are the payoffs in your waiting? Locate the hidden fears. Do a list on paper. Sneak a peek at week 1, core negative beliefs. Laugh. Yes, the nasty critters are still there. Note your progress. Read yourself the affirmations on page 36 and 37, and then write some affirmations about your continued creativity as you end the course.
Mend any mending. Repot any pinched and languishing plants. Select a God jar. A what? A jar, a box, a vase, a container. Something to put your fears, your resentments, your hopes, your dreams, your worries into. Use your God jar. Start with your fear list from task 1 above. When worried, remind yourself it's in the jar. God's got it. Then take the next action. Now check how. Honestly, what would you most like to create? Open-hearted, what oddball paths would you dare to try? Willing, what appearances are you willing to shed to pursue your dream? List 5 people you can talk to about your dreams and with whom you feel supported to dream and then plan. Reread this book. Share it with a friend. Remember that the miracle is one artist sharing with another. Trust God. Trust yourself. Good luck, and God bless you. Check-in. How many days this week did you do your morning pages? Have you accepted them yet as a permanent spiritual practice? What was the experience for you? Did you do your artist date this week? Will you allow yourself these on a permanent basis as well? What did you do? How did it feel? Did you experience any synchronicity this week? What was it? Were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? Describe them. As a recovering creative, you now have put many hours into your recovery over these 3 months, changing rapidly as you grew. For your recovery to continue, you require a commitment to further creative plans. The contract on the following page will help you accomplish them. Creativity contract. My name is... I am a recovering creative person. To further my growth and my joy, I now commit myself to the following self-nurturing plans. Morning pages have been an important part of my self-nurturing and self-discovery. I, your name, hereby commit myself to continuing to work with them for the next 90 days. Artist dates have been integral to my growth in self-love and my deepening joy in living. I, your name, am willing to commit to another 90 days of weekly artist dates for self-care. In the course of following the artist's way and healing my artist within, I have discovered that I have a number of creative interests. While I hope to develop many of them, my specific commitment for the next 90 days is to allow myself to more fully explore what? My concrete commitment to a plan of action is a critical part of nurturing my artist. For the next 90 days, my planned self-nurturing creative action plan is what? I have chosen who, as my creative colleague, and X is my creative backup. I am committed to a weekly phone check-in. I have made the above commitments and will begin my new commitment on what date? Sign it. Epilogue. The Artist's Way. In ending this book, I yearned for a final flourish, some fillip of the imagination that would sign the book. This was a small and harmless conceit. I felt, until I remembered, the number of times I have enjoyed a painting and then been distracted by the outsized artistic signature of its maker, so no final flourish is here. The truth is that this book should probably end with an image from another book. As I recall it, and this may be my imagination and not my memory at work, an early edition of Thomas Merton's Seven-Story Mountain featured a mountain on its jacket. The Seven-Story Mountain, no doubt. Maybe it did and maybe it didn't. I read the book many years ago, a precocious 12-year-old. What I conjure now is a mountain of Himalayan proportions, with a path winding upward to its height. That path, a spiral path, is how I think of the artist's way. As we pursue climbing it, we circle back on the same views over and over at slightly different altitudes. I've been here before, we think, hitting a spell of drought, and in a sense we have been. The road is never straight. Growth is a spiral process, doubling back on itself, reassessing and regrouping. As artists, our progress is often dogged by rough terrain or storms. A fog may obscure the distance we have covered or the progress we have made toward our goal. While the occasional dazzling vista may grace us, it is really best to proceed a step at a time, focusing on the path beneath our feet as much as the heights still before us. The Artist's Way is a spiritual journey, a pilgrimage home to the self. Like all great journeys, it entails dangers of the trail.